Thank you for tuning in to the best parenting show on the internet, Post Daily Dose.
It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post. It's the Post. The Post Daily Dose. It's the Post. It's the Post.
Hey, good evening, Facebook. Welcome to another episode of Post Daily Dose with me, your trusted parenting advisor, faithful guide and servant on the healing journey. What's my name? Big Papa Bryan+Post. So good evening, everyone. I hope you're doing fantastic, and thanks for chiming in and tuning in for another episode. So we've been going through, since February 1st, I've been going through a process. It's called Inside the Parenting Matrix. Some of you have heard me talk about it. I believe that the majority of parents operate from inside this parenting matrix that exists based on these years of and decades of generations of conditioning. And it's how most people view children and the process of parenting. And so I've been taking a group of parents and professionals through this process every single day since February 1st to help them break out of the matrix. And so every day, usually, during the day, it's like 4:30 in the morning. I do a live video in the Post+Evolution private membership group. And so it's a different exercise every day, a different kind of thought and process every day that just builds on the next. Hey, good evening, Mother. And so something's been coming up that I just wanted to share with everyone. And it's this idea of how children's behaviors are viewed inside the matrix. And I wanted to share with you guys this evening, kind of this three-phase process that you can start applying in your home that may be beneficial. And this is, just a byproduct of some of the good work that the parents inside the Matrix program have been doing. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. So we have a great tendency inside the matrix to view children's behaviors as intentional. So that's number one. We view their behaviors as intentional. And so what I mean by that is we view them as making a conscious choice to misbehave. And you may have heard it defined as being willfully disobedient, being disrespectful. That's a big one, very common. Being defiant, being manipulative, being obnoxious, being loud and overwhelming, being incessant chatter. What are some of the other ones? Being aggressive. And then there's, the behaviors like lying, stealing, those kind of behaviors, self-mutilation. We see those behaviors inside of the parenting matrix. We see those behaviors as intentional. So here's the first step, the first phase. I want you to write down your child's behaviors that are the most challenging to you. So like unencumbered, I just want you to write them down the way you experience them. So my children are, and then I want you to also write down the impact it has on you. My children are obnoxious and loud, and it makes me really angry. My children are hyperactive and they tear up my house and they don't care. My children are blatantly disrespectful. They don't care about disrespecting me. They may even enjoy disrespecting me. So I want you to write that down, just completely unencumbered. And I want you to just do it as much as you possibly can, because ultimately that is all matrix conditioning, because that's how the matrix wants you to view your child's behaviors, because ultimately the matrix wants you to feel helpless when it comes to your child's behaviors, because then you can feed into other systems from within the matrix that feed that helplessness and leaves you feeling victimized oftentimes. One of the biggest characteristics, something has popped up on my screen. Please tell something. One of the biggest characteristics of parents operating within the matrix is not only being reactive, but feeling like they're under attack by their children. So you may be a part of message boards or groups, what have you, and you feel like you'll hear a common theme and a common kind of mindset. It's that our children are doing this to us. Our children are victimizing us, and parents end up feeling really resentful and really angry towards their children because their children make them feel so helpless. That's very, very common inside the parenting matrix. So the number 2 thing I want you to do, especially if you've been following Big Papa for a while, so I believe that there are only 2 primary emotions, love and fear, and I believe that fear and stress are interchangeable, and I believe that all behavior arises from a state of stress and is ultimately fueled by fear. So number 1 is I want you to write this completely unencumbered, perspective on your child's behavior. Number 2 thing I want you to do is I want you to write, instead of what you wrote, so right underneath it, I want you to write, my child becomes stressed out and scared and then does this. So my child becomes stressed out and scared and then does this. Whatever that number 1 part is. So this is going to be like a paragraph. So each of those behaviors, you're going to make it like a paragraph. So each of those things you list out, you're going to make it like a paragraph. So my child becomes stressed out and scared and becomes obnoxious and overwhelming and stresses me out. My child becomes stressed out and scared and then becomes aggressive and hits me and tears up stuff in the house, and that makes me really angry and really sad and makes me feel overwhelmed. My child becomes stressed out and scared and disrespects me and talks back to me, and that makes me really mad. So that's the second phase of what I want you to do. All of this is going to move you towards looking at your child's behavior differently, considering it in a different way. Okay, so we got number 1 and we got number 2. So here's the thought, and I shared this on 60 Second Parenting and Instagram. What if the behaviors you've identified as problem behaviors were not problem behaviors? What if the behaviors you've identified as problem behaviors were not actually problem behaviors? I spoke to this a couple weeks ago when a parent had asked me about disrespect. Like, when do you do something different when you view the child as being disrespectful? And my response, and some parents didn't quite understand it, but my response was, what is disrespect? What is disrespect? What if, and this is just something I want you to consider, what if you didn't see disrespect? Like, how do you describe disrespect? And listen to your description. And ask yourself the question, where does that definition of disrespect come from? Where did you acquire that from? Like what ingrained conditioning and what generations of imprinting did you acquire that belief of disrespect? What if there was no such thing as disrespect? So when I say what is disrespect? Like that's coming purely from outside of the matrix. Because outside of the matrix, there's no disrespect. Your child's not disrespecting you. Your child's stressed out and scared and overwhelmed and doing the best they can to cope. So that's my knowing. But what if that was your knowing also? How would you interpret your child's behavior differently? What would you do then? If misbehavior didn't exist? What if misbehavior was just a cry for help? What if your child's misbehavior was just a cry for help? Every time your child misbehaved, doesn't matter what the behavior is. If every time your child misbehaved, all you heard was a wailing infant, terrified, how would that change your internal reactions? How would that change your brain's neural circuitry? So the brain, anytime there's a problem, this is pretty cool. It's some research I learned about recently. Anytime that there's a problem, the neural circuitry in the brain starts to reorganize itself to come up with a solution. Sometimes it happens really quick. Have you ever encountered a problem and then almost immediately you came up with a solution? Or you're right in the middle of a crisis and then the light bulb came on? Well, what's happening in that moment is your brain is reorganizing. The brain's so amazing. It's reorganizing in that moment to come up with a solution. Because see, I believe all solutions are within us. I believe any solution that you have ever needed already exists within you. And the only thing that's keeping you from that solution is stress and fear. You have every answer inside of you already. I had a situation with my now 15-year-old daughter when she was about 18 months old, 2 years old maybe. She was sitting on the floor in the bedroom with her mom and she was playing with a bottle cap off of a bubble bottle and she swallowed the cap. And her mom just let out this blood-curdling scream, and I was outside. We were actually in one of our group homes in Colorado at the time. And I was outside, I ran in, and her mom was like, she can't breathe, she can't breathe. This is my 2-year-old daughter. And I said, what happened? What happened? And she's choking. She swallowed a bottle cap. And so I picked her up and I stuck my finger down in her throat. And I could feel it, but her teeth were clenched. And she was choking. Her teeth were clenched, and so it was hard to get down there, and I could touch it. And when I would touch it and I could move it to the side, and I could hear her catch a breath, but I couldn't hold on to it, and I couldn't get it out, so she was still choking. And so then I tried to do Heimlich. I turned her upside down. I was doing everything I could possibly do. And she's sitting here, my 2-year-old sitting here, dying in my arms. And I'm doing everything I can. I mean, I'm a big guy. I'm 6'1". I weigh 270 pounds. So I'm not a small person, and I'm quite strong. And I've got my 2-year-old in my arms, and I can't help her. And in the stress and the confusion and the fear of my mind, I started to see her dead body on the floor. I started to see her lifeless. I started to see the ambulance coming. I started to see the headlines. And this is happening in a moment's time. And you know what happened? My arms went limp. They went completely limp. And I looked at her mother, and I was in sheer panic. And I said, I can't do it. I don't have any strength in my arms. I can't do it. My daughter is choking to death. She is dying in my arms. And in a moment's time, it felt like God tapped me on the top of my head and said, breathe. I took a deep breath, stuck my finger into my daughter's throat and pulled the bottle cap out. And then I was just flooded with adrenaline. She almost died in my arms. So if you have any inkling that Big Papa doesn't believe 100% in everything he tells you when it comes to breathing and stress and fear, just know that some of the experiences I've had have literally been life or death. And in that moment, despite all of my knowledge and all of my wisdom and all my education and all my experience, I got overwhelmed and scared, and I stopped breathing. And my 2-year-old was not throwing a tantrum. My 2-year-old was not cursing me. She was not crying helplessly. She was dying. And her mother and I were sitting there about to watch her die. And my neural circuitry, God rewired my neural circuitry in a split second and said, breathe. And I took one deep breath, just one, and I reached my finger into that still clamped mouth. Her jaws were just as clamped then as they had been before. And she was starting to turn blue. And I pulled that bottle cap out of her mouth. So what if what you've been seeing and what you've been conditioned to believe is all these other things actually isn't? How does that change the way you respond to your child emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, and behaviorally? So then the number 3 phase is to now write, because my child is stressed out and scared, I will do this about their behavior to help them feel better. Because my child is stressed out and scared, I will do this about their behavior to help them feel better. 3 phases. 3 phases. You don't have to do anything but sit down with a piece of paper and work through that process. And that's what happens when you operate outside of the matrix. Yes, there are lots of school environments that are still really stressful. Herb says, how does he distinguish disrespectful behavior from coping behavior? Disrespectful behavior is coping behavior. Think about that. Disrespectful behavior is coping behavior because the disrespect has nothing to do with you and I. It has everything to do with your child's attempt to survive in that moment, which tells you he's stressed out and scared. Don't worry about distinctions, guys. There is no distinction. There is no distinction. All the attempts to make distinctions between is this good manipulative behavior or bad manipulative behavior is just mental fuckery. That's all you're doing. The moment you start trying to think, is he being disrespectful because of his trauma, or is he being disrespectful just because he's being honoring? It's just mental fuckery. And stress and fear causes you to do that. Just see stress and fear. Just see your own stress and fear. But work through these phases I just talked to you about. Work through them and see what happens. See if that challenges you. And you can still join us in the Levolution. If you want to challenge the parenting matrix, if you want to see something different, we have a whole program. It's available every day that we've gone through so far. We're working on day 26. Every day, I'll give you a new lesson. I'll give you something new to think about to work you out of the parenting matrix. All you got to do is join us in the Levolution. Just go to thenewparentinglevolution.com or go to parentingmatrix.com and join us. It's possible. It's transformative. It's powerful. You'll see there's a whole group of people in there changing their lives. But it takes work. It's not easy. So that's it. 3 steps to challenge the matrix belief system. That's it. Remember, in any given situation, we can continue to react from same messages and imprints of stress and fear and overwhelm, or we can stop and we can take 3 to 10 deep breaths, sometimes just one. Take a deep breath, choose love, and maybe just save your child's life. God bless you. Big Papa loves you. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope your bodies rest this evening. I hope your cells release the stress and fear. I hope you wake up in the morning revised, re-energized, re-inspired, reinvigorated, and most of all, restored. See you tomorrow, guys.